Well, thank you everybody for coming this morning. There's a conflicting event going on over at the Senate building, so if you notice people have to leave, it's because there's a hearing going to start over there, and it's pretty important hearing. This formation of this caucus is something that Senator Frentz and I have been talking about, I guess, probably back in October. We started talking about this. You know, the governor has laid out a very bold initiative on clean energy, and so we are bringing as many people together in our caucus as we can to start that conversation of how we can accomplish that. So we will be engaging all of the stakeholders that care about this issue. And you know, we've seen thousands of people come to the Capitol here over the last legislative session urging us to make this issue a priority. And as I just kind of personally reflect on it, I've thought about the fact that, you know, the future is really not mine, but the future does belong to my grandchildren, and got 8 of them now, and I want to do what I can do, and I want them to remember me as somebody who led to make sure that the future that they're going to enjoy had a cleaner environment than the one we have today, cleaner air, that we quit reading in the newspaper that there's air quality problems, especially here in the metropolitan area, that the environment is a better place for them and their families, more sustainable than the path that we're currently on. So I just can't say thanks enough to the governor for leading on this, for setting a bold agenda, and I want to thank Senator Frentz especially for his work on this and his willingness to be the chair of this group of members of the Senate as we go forward, and just want to encourage my Senate Republican colleagues. Let's hold hearings on these bills, right? All the energy bills. You know, we all often say we all paid our $100, and we have the right to introduce legislation. And you know what? It also should be heard in committee, and people should be able to come in and testify. So I really want to encourage them hard. We've been struggling with that here in the Senate, in this current leadership, to give the bills related to this subject a hearing so the public gets the only chance the public really gets to participate in this process. So with that, I want to turn it over to Senator Frentz to give you a little outline of what he's thinking about.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and thank you for coming. We're here, above all, to give a voice to Minnesotans who are asking us to take action on climate change. We want to do this in a fashion that allows for hearings, that allows for the questions of the causes and effects of climate change to be heard, and we want Minnesotans to see us as working together, collaborate. This should be a bipartisan issue. On the issues of climate change, Minnesotans have heard predictions for 20 years about what might happen and how climate change may affect our planet. By and large, those predictions have come true. Where we are today goes something like this. If your house was on fire, wouldn't you want to start by asking how badly the fire is burning before arguing about the cost of the fire hoses? What we need to do in the Minnesota Senate is hold hearings on the causes and effects in climate change. What are we afraid of? Let's find out what the truth is. Let's drill down and do what we do best in the legislature, which is bring witnesses forward from the community, scientists, academics, business owners, labor, environmentalists, and talk about it. We are much more likely to get it right if we do that than to put our head in the sand and act like there is no problem. Now, the Clean Energy Climate Caucus is joining the governor's climate cabinet and our friends in the House DFL Climate Action Caucus. We're very excited to work with them and any other legislator that wants to work on these issues. As we go forward, here's some things that we see ourselves doing. First, promote hearings and legislation that address clean energy and climate change. We want to advance the governor's bill, of which I'm proud to be the chief author. We want to advance all the ideas that all these fine legislators have had about how to address clean energy and climate change issues. Let's go to it, let's hear about it, let's debate it, let's vote on it, and let's get it done. Number 2, we want to give a voice to Minnesotans who have for many years already been working on this issue. We're talking about clean energy advocates. We're talking about business owners, one of whom is here today to tell us about the economic opportunities. We often boast there are 60,000 clean energy jobs right now in Minnesota. Who knows where we can go? And how do we address the transition that respects all Minnesotans' rights to work, earn a living, and have a great quality of life? As a DFLer from North Mankato, I very much want to advance the notion that this is good policy for greater Minnesota. We want wind and solar arrays on Minnesota farms. We want to create a tax base in our rural counties that promotes the quality of life outside of the metro area. And we want those jobs and those families to be happy to live and work communities just like mine, whether they're 50 miles from the metro or 250. We can do that. Finally, we want to shine a light on the science. Look, again, what are we afraid of? We should be asking ourselves, what is the truth about the science of climate change? We are the one country out of the 20 that were signatories to the Paris Accords who withdrew. Think about that. We are 4% of the world's population, putting out about 17% of the carbon emissions, and we withdraw from the one signature worldwide agreement to work on climate change and try to turn things around and save the planet for our kids and for our grandkids. We're also going to hold listening sessions around the state. We have a lot of advocates who have a lot of things to say. In my district, we have several institutions of higher learning. Do you want to know how many emails I get from college students about the issues of climate change? I lost count a long time ago. And we're going to go to those Minnesotans, ask them, what do you think? What are the costs and benefits of change? How do we get there? And I think we'll find a lot of willing voices. Now, I'd like to introduce a couple speakers for you. First, I'd like to introduce Jessica Lumen, who's the Executive Director of the Minnesota Building and Construction's Trade Council. Talk with us just a little bit about how labor and jobs fit into our plans and how we go forward. And I want to thank Jessica for coming.
Thank you very much, Senator. As the Senator said, my name is Jessica Lumen, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Minnesota State Building and Construction Trades Council. On behalf of the 70,000 union construction professionals in the state of Minnesota, I want to congratulate the Minnesota Senate DFL Clean Energy and Climate Caucus for their focus on a practical, responsible, and meaningful approach to achieving our state's clean energy future. The Minnesota State Building and Construction Trades Council supports policies that meet the energy needs of today and help us build toward a clean energy future by advocating for the expansion of renewable energy, power storage, energy efficiency, and innovative technologies. The building trades believe that climate change must be addressed, that investments must be made in operations, maintenance, and repair of Minnesota's energy infrastructure. Investments must be made in the development and deployment of technologies like solar, wind, hydroelectric, carbon capture and utilization, battery storage, and low-carbon electrified transportation. Minnesota building trades believe that investments must be made to increase energy efficiency in industrial, commercial, and residential buildings, to retrofit our schools and our public buildings to make our communities safe and resilient. All work in the legacy, renewable, and energy efficiency sectors must be performed by the safest, most highly trained, skilled workers in Minnesota. Minnesota's prevailing wage laws and labor and licensing standards are critical to successfully building the infrastructure for our clean energy future. And Minnesota building trades men and women believe that all communities and all workers must be respected. Finally, energy must be reliable, accessible, and affordable. Not only do we buy Minnesota's energy infrastructure, but we build Minnesota's energy infrastructure. These pro-worker energy initiatives are aligned with the work of the Senate DFL Caucus as we look forward to working with this group, the entire Minnesota legislature, the Walz-Flanagan administration, to ensure that Minnesota's clean energy future is good for our state, our economy, our communities, and all Minnesota workers.
Thank you, Jessica. Good job. Now I'd like to introduce to you Eric Posse. Eric is the president of IPS Solar. Since 1991, IPS Solar has been a leader in creation of clean energy, working with businesses, communities, and residents to talk a little bit about where we're going to go with Minnesota businesses with the changes we'd like to see. Eric?
Thank you, Senator Frentz. When a senator asks a solar person to come and speak, you better bring the sun with you, which I was able to do today. Didn't say anything about the heat, but I was able to bring the sun. My name is Eric Posse. I'm the Chief Development Officer at IPS Solar. We're a local solar development company and construction company, union contractor, based out of Roseville, Minnesota. And I want to echo what I've been hearing so far this morning, which is that we don't need to choose between the planet and the economy. IPS was one of the fastest growing companies in the state. We were recently recognized as the fastest growing company in 2017 by Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. We were also the second fastest growing company according to Inc. magazine in the state. And currently, Minnesotans export $18 billion of our own money to import fuels like natural gas and coal. We should reinvest those dollars in the state in infrastructure jobs, infrastructure that supports local jobs and can't be exported. Innovation in the private sector, since I joined the company in 2007, we've seen 95% cost reduction in solar panel technology, 95% in just 13 years. If we think about growing that area, there's certainly no limit to what we can do. Businesses like certainty. Over the last month, we've seen 3 major announcements from local Fortune 500 or large private companies, including Cargill, Target, and Ecolab, all of which are committing their resources to addressing climate change, not because it's good politics, but it certainly is affecting their profitability and business long term. And so I commend the Clean Energy and Climate Caucus for this first of many steps to addressing this issue. And thank you, Senator Frentz, again for inviting me to speak today.
Thanks, Eric. Well, the only thing I'd like to add is what you can probably already see from your release. We are here on behalf of 29 of our fellow senators out of our caucus of 32. We're sending a message to you that the DFL Senate caucus is serious about working on clean energy and climate. And with that, any of us here would be happy to take questions if there are any. Understanding, of course, that we'd like the questions to be limited to the topic today, which is the announcement of our Clean Energy and Climate Caucus.
So how important a step is this in terms of convincing Republican leadership to take a listen to these issues?
Well, it's a first step. I mean, you heard me request that the Republicans hold hearings. I think as a leader, I always felt an obligation to give members who come with an idea an opportunity to present it to the committee and have testimony. So I think that maybe that's the first step, is me as the former majority leader challenging them to do as previous leaders have and show the courtesy that members deserve to bring their bills forward and allow for them to explain what their ideas are and have an opportunity for people that support it to come and promote the legislation. That's where this has to start if it's going to move in the legislature.
Do you think the Senate DFL caucus is united behind the governor's plan? Is it unanimous support for the carbon-free energy grid by 2050?
Well, I mean, if we took the vote today, we'd come up short because it takes 34 to pass something. So I think the science is unquestionable, and I think just about virtually most people, I think, agree on that. So the question kind of is, if you believe the science, what's the best way to move forward and try to mitigate the impacts that we all see on the horizon? And so it's going to start with, I'm sure I haven't read the governor's bill. I'm sure probably few of us probably have. But it's more than just the bill. I mean, bills are always a place to start in this process. And then as we engage all the stakeholders that potentially are impacted by a piece of legislation, any piece of legislation, bills change as they move forward. But the governor set a very, very bold initiative. I remember when we did this under Governor Plenty, turned out to be a very bipartisan effort, the 25 by 25. I do think that the governor's bold vision here, when it results in a piece of legislation that gets to his desk, there'll be bipartisan support for it.
You have 3 members who are not here Eakin, Sparks, and Tomasoni. Was there an effort to try to get them to make this a unanimous caucus, and do they not support it?
Well, I actually only, I'll have Senator Frentz has been talking to members, so I think he can probably better address that than me. But I was just recently at a conference with Senator, one of the senators who's one of the three that's not on the list, and he says, Tom, I'm not against it. He said, before I put my name on it, I want to know more about what it all entails. So, but with that, I think Senator Frentz has been the one actually talking to members about this.
It's a good question, and I've talked to every member of our caucus. There is no one opposed to the work of the Clean Energy Climate Caucus. There are members who have yet to commit to it. I'm optimistic that as we work on it, we'll continue to show good reasons for that. Just like we have members from all across the state here that are part of this, we have different constituencies and different reasons for joining and for not joining right now. And I'm hopeful that when they see the work that we do and the way that Minnesotans react to it in the 2020 campaigns, we have had candidates for state senate who've already reached out to us to ask about it, to say, can I indicate I would like to join the Climate Clean Energy Caucus if I am elected to the Senate, that kind of thing. And I'm hoping that for the members that aren't yet officially joining us, that there'll be good reasons to in the future. Having said that, that's what makes it democracy. We have 67 senators and 67 districts and 67 humans. Ms. Lahammer.
Is there political risk for you for rural members? Not all of you are from the metro. Is this a slightly tougher district in competitive seats outside the metro?
I think there's risk for me in my district, in my beloved Mankato, North Mankato, in not taking further action. The emails I get asking me to take action on climate change are about 20-1 in favor of what we're doing here. And I got a pretty good idea that around the state, Minnesotans are starting to wake up to the realization that this is a real issue and we need to address it. We can disagree about how to address it. We can argue about how much the fire hose costs, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to do something. And so my answer is, I don't feel any political risk at all, and I think what we're saying is let's talk about it in a hearing. That should be no risk to anybody. If we disagree at the end of the testimony, that's where the rubber meets the road, I think.
Senator Bakk, same question, political risk for you and Iron Range lawmakers. This is an old fight between environmentalists and mining and business and labor up on the range.
Well, I mean, to the point that Jessica made on the building trades, you know, there is a way for the environment and a sustainable growing economy can work together, and I just believe that will happen. And I think most of the people in my district, and probably in every district, think that doing something to respond to the science that's unquestionable is really, really important. I just, you know, I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is, you know, we have a federal government that's incredibly polarized, right? And pretty hard to get anything done out there. And so what I think you see happening is on a whole lot of areas, you see states leading. And you can see it here in Minnesota on the minimum wage, on transportation, on medical marijuana. You know, marijuana is still against the federal law, but states are still moving forward on things like that. So because our federal government, I don't think we can wait for them. And I just want my grandchildren to know that I did something, right? That I didn't ignore what's unquestionably a problem.
Senator, how do you reconcile the objectives of this caucus with construction of Enbridge's Line 3 pipeline?
Well, there's apparently a certificate of need that for now we need additional capacity. But I think the issue with the pipeline is there's a 50-year-old pipe that is at the end of its life cycle, and something bad is going to happen. Infrastructure doesn't last forever. We certainly saw that with the I-35 bridge. Infrastructure deteriorates over time, and not replacing it, I think, is more risk to the environment than doing nothing.
Let me ask my question a little bit more directly. The other side, the climate change folks, are going to say we need to not have any more pipelines, or we need to phase them out because we have to get away from fossil fuels. Do you believe long-term that that's the case, and is Enbridge just a stopgap measure, or what's your philosophy?
Well, I think we're moving to more electric vehicles. That's coming, right? That's deniable. They're coming down in price. So hopefully going forward, we're going to have, because this is really about cars, right? Until we decide to quit using cars, we're going to need petroleum. But as we move to cleaner cars, more and more electric, and it becomes more affordable, I mean, I'm hopeful that we'll need less fossil fuels.
Do you think that your caucus is united in that stance, generally pro Line 3, especially the Climate Caucus?
We haven't discussed that. You know, I mean, the question on Line 3 is, I mean, no company is going to invest billions of dollars in a project that they don't think they need. And they certainly don't want a major spill to happen along that 50-year-old pipe.
Senator Kent, could I get you to weigh in on that same question? About Line 3, is there a fundamental tension between building Line 3 and between the objectives of this caucus?
I think these are all questions that need hearings. And that's the point of why we're here today, is to say that these are important questions, and we need everybody have a chance to have these conversations and talk about where they stand and have that opportunity.
You support construction of Line 3 of the upgrade?
These are questions that we're still looking at, and I too, it is a complicated issue. I think you framed it pretty well. We have, and Senator Bakk as well, we have this line that is problematic. We have to have a solution to that. I personally wish 25 years ago we would have made different choices when we started seeing some of these things, but here we are. And so what's the safest thing we can do right now? And those are the conversations we need to keep having.
So would it be fair to say that you are undecided on whether Enbridge's Line 3 ought to be built or the upgrade ought to be constructed?
Sure, yeah.
Senator Kent, has the caucus had to be kind of pushed in this direction?
For this today?
Yeah.
I will let Senator Frentz speak to that, but that's absolutely not my sense of it. That this is something that we all recognize. We all know it. Senator Bakk is right. It's about the science, which is undeniable, and it's about our communities. And Senator Frentz isn't the only one who's getting emails in at least a 20-to-1 ratio in support of taking the changes, making the changes that we need to. There's a huge economic opportunity for Minnesota if we take these steps. So it's just a win-win situation if we handle this right and give it the attention and care and that it deserves.
I'd just add what you probably already know, which is I didn't twist any arms. Everybody felt like this was a good thing for us to do. And of course, we have our colleagues, the men and women of the House, did the exact same thing. I got a text from Representative Patty Acom, who chairs the House Climate Action Caucus, and they're just psyched, man. I mean, they're working on these issues. We should be working on this and not knocking this bottle of water over, which cap fastened securely.
Time for one more question.
When do the
Senator Bakk, can I have Senator Bakk respond to that question quickly before one more about the
whether we had to
caucus
twist
have
arms?
To be, yeah, pushed along.
He's just going to say, talk to
Did you
Senator
have
Frentz,
to be
but
convinced of this?
I never asked anybody to belong. Senator Frentz has been the one talking to members about this, and I just want to thank him for his work. Governors lay out a vision, right? And they sell it to the whole state. He talked about this on the campaign trail. And, but governors can't sign bills. The legislature needs to send them to them. So we're picking up on one of the governor's initiatives that's very bold, and I'm going to try and encourage the Republicans to start moving on this so that the public can get engaged in the process. It's not in being very effective being engaged in the process to just come and have a rally, right? We have to actually have real hearings where people take real votes, where you address concerns of stakeholders that potentially are impacted, and that's just how this process should work. So the governor laid out the initiative, and we're responding to be supportive of the direction that he wants to go, and I'm supportive of that personally.
Are you responding to some of the more liberal members of your caucus, though, on this as well, kind of pushing some of the more moderates?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the governor laid this out. This isn't something that we cooked up because it's good politics for November. That's not what happened. I mean, the governor put this on the front burner and said this is important and he wants to get something done on it. And we're responding that, we're stepping up, wanting to flush out kind of where, what's in the governor's bill. Are there ways to make it better? Are there ways to address shortcomings in it? We don't know that until we actually get into the process. Governors have the advantage of just proposing things kind of in a vacuum, and in the case of the legislature, all of a sudden the public gets to participate in the process. So this is a very, very important step in trying to move the governor's vision forward.
Important for you in holding on to your leadership position as well?
Nothing to do with that.
It's related.
Nothing to do with it. I said Nick and I talked about this back in October, right? This isn't new.
One more question
Okay.
for Rio.
Senator Frentz, do you have some specific ideas already outside of what the governor is in the governor's bill that you want to start looking at, a direction that you want to go, or are you just kind of starting at the beginning here?
Thanks, Shannon. Some of both. I mean, we have legislators who have put out different bills besides the 3 prongs of the governor's bill, which, just for everybody here, in the governor's bill, carbon-free by 2050, energy optimization, and then clean energy first. So we have legislators with other ideas, carbon tax, sequestration, tax credits for businesses, things like that. I've asked for all of them to send them to us for our first meeting, which I think will be in January, and we'll kind of kick it around and talk about where our priorities are. There's definitely other ideas. Other states and other countries have looked at it differently too. So I think that's the nice thing which we're alluding to here, which is we don't know exactly what our focus will be legislatively. As the author of the governor's bill, I'm a believer in what it stands for, though, which is we can't wait around much longer, and I'm looking forward to all that. And now, unless you want us to get in trouble with Ellen, we have to shut this down, if that's cool. Do people still say cool? Is that still a thing?
It's not cool.
Okay, thank you very much. Feel free to hit up individual members. I'm off to Senator Uyghur's taping. Thank you for coming. Oh, hey, we're going to do a photo. Carrie.